Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for our January 28th board meeting of the directors in person, on Zoom, and those staying engaged by watching the recording at a later time. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during community comment, they will need to fill out a speaker form located in the lobby on the table and turn it in to Board Secretary Kim Coven, seated at the table on my left. Comments will take place during the designated community comment portion of our agenda. Before we dive into tonight's agenda, I want to take a moment to introduce those seated at the table with me. To my right, we have Superintendent Degner, Directors Eystone, Eastham, and Williams. I'm President Malone. To my left, we have Vice President Abraham and Directors Finch and Lingo, as well as Board Secretary Coven. And that takes us right to tonight's agenda. The first topic is the Education Showcase by Horn Elementary. Superintendent Degner, did you want to say anything before?
I'll just give him some time to walk up to the microphone here, but we have Principal Cannon and some staff from Horn Elementary with us, and we're excited to have them share a little bit about some of their work at Horn that makes the district who we are. So thank you, Principal Cannon.
All right, thank you so much for welcoming us tonight. We are really excited to be able to showcase Horn and the great things that we have going there. The topic we chose tonight was to talk about our International Week and ways that we are involving our diverse community and families together at Horn and students to celebrate all the different cultures and countries that they represent. So I'm going to turn it over to my three ELL teachers. And this is Liz Wilmore, Stacy Cavey, and Stacy Alfaro, and they were instrumental in developing this special week. So.
Hi, everyone. So I've been nominated to speak tonight, but I've got my team here supporting me. There was a slide deck, if that's, I'm not sure if that's available somewhere. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
You guys want to go ahead and get started, and then we'll get it pulled up as soon as we can.
Sure, absolutely. So thank you all for having us tonight. So as Kristen said, my name is Liz Wilmore. I'm one of the ELL teachers at Horn. We have my colleague Stacy Cavey, Stacy Alfaro, and we are three of a team of 5 ELL teachers. That includes Kelly Nevlin and Emily Rancor. So we're talking tonight about the International Week that we held at Horn back in October. So Horn is a school with over 400 students. We have currently 121 students in our ELL department, and just looking at those ELL students, they represent over 25 languages spoken and come from all over the world. And so International Night has been a Horn tradition for a really long time because it was a way of celebrating our school and the cultures that are represented at our school. During the COVID pandemic, all of that was put on hold, like so many things. And so when we came back from the pandemic and decided to revive the event this year, we thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of go back and rethink the structure of the event and to revisit what the goals were. Previously, it had been an event that would take place in the evening. Families would come and families would prepare presentations or food or things to share from their home cultures. And we really wanted to see whether we could implement a different structure that would allow us a little bit more breadth or more depth than a single evening event. So, thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you.
So give me a little nod when you're ready.
Yeah, no, you can keep on going. Thank you. And actually, the next slide has our goals on it. So the outcome of these discussions was really a focus on 4 goals that we wanted to build appreciation for and also provide exposure to cultures both within our building and around the world. And we wanted it to be an opportunity to build school community as well as to strengthen connections between the school and the families at Horn. So based on that, we decided that we would, instead of having a single night, that we would turn it into an international week so that we could have events happening throughout the week while still having a family picnic happening outside to kind of give an opportunity for that school and family connection. So we started with a kickoff event where students got together with their buddy classes to create invitations for the event so that they could tell their families about what was going on. We also had daily read alouds, so our teacher librarian, Connie McCain, compiled a selection of multicultural books for teachers to choose from, and that way teachers would be able to select something that was appropriate for their class and grade level. Our PTO also sponsored the purchase of books that were highlighting cultures and countries of Horn students. In the weeks leading up to the event, we worked with our ELL students on projects where they provided information about their home countries or compared the schools in their home countries to the school here in the United States. And we also made an invitation to parents and had some parents submit videos with information. ELL students also wrote interview questions and made videos where they interviewed each other about their home countries. And then all of these resources were made available digitally for classroom teachers to share in their homeroom classes. If you ever ask an ELL student whether they would love to stand up in front of their classroom and give a presentation, you'll get a resounding no. But this was this opportunity for them to prepare and practice information, and then for either that to be shared just as a presentation, or for them to be there to present or to answer questions about it. On Thursday night, we had a family picnic. So families were invited to bring their dinner to school. To eat there, and then we asked our PTO again to sponsor desserts. So they purchased desserts that were shared, and it was just a wonderful opportunity for everybody to come together. The kids were playing with each other, families and teachers got to see each other, and a lot of families also brought desserts to share with each other. The final day, Friday, students were invited to wear traditional clothing, patriotic wear, team jerseys, or anything that represented their country or home culture. So we have some photos of our wonderful students and some staff. A possible direction in the future would be to have an assembly where students were able to show those things off, or possibly to have to see if we could get a community performance in. But that's kind of on the list for a future year. And then finally, our wonderful Stacy applied for and received a grant from the ICCSD Foundation to purchase bilingual books for all of the ELL students at the kindergarten level. So those were distributed at the end of International Week, and students were able to bring those home to read them together with our families. That's everything that we have for you. Thank you so much for letting us share about this event at our school.
Do you guys have any questions or anything?
It's okay to ask a question. Can you give us an idea about how many books in how many languages?
Yes. There were 29 books for our kindergarten students. I want to say 12 to 15 languages.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads me to something. This is a great presentation. It's wonderful work on your part and the students' part and the rest of the staff to bring students together in a multicultural setting. I'm also interested with that many languages in families of Horn students. How do you think we're doing, the board is doing in supporting you in the interpretation efforts on the part of communications from the school to families and families to the school?
I would say that I think that it's really wonderful that we have so many resources that are translated. And I am always one of the voices at school when people are talking about tools like Talking Points, which I think are really very helpful because they offer that home language translation. But I'm always also the annoying voice that says, remember that a machine translation is not as good as a human translation. Mm-hmm. And so I think that I think that it's really wonderful to have those resources. I think it would be helpful for teachers to always remember that when we are using machine translation, shorter is better. But I think that we really appreciate the opportunity, like we really appreciate the resources that are in place so that we can make sure that there are interpreters available at conferences. And of course, there are some families that speak languages that we have not been able to get an in-person interpreter for, and in those cases, we usually use a resource like Language Line or Heads Up or one of the other online interpretation resources.
And as an administrator, I would say that Talking Points has been instrumental in getting to families. Whenever I send something out, I receive 100, emails back, just thank you for the information, and I have yet to have anybody say that they didn't receive my message yet through Talking Points, so I feel like that is a really beneficial, piece of technology that we use.
Great. Thank you. It's encouraging to hear your experiences there.
I appreciate you all coming tonight to share. It sounds like it was a great event. If you have it this coming October, feel free to invite the board. So we would love to come. I like baklava. I'm just saying. Yeah. But thank you so much for sharing. We do appreciate it. It was a nice presentation.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a good night. Okay, next up would be community comment, but we do not have any. So we can move on to approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
I move to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. Thank you, Director Abraham. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Before we get to tonight's consent agenda, did directors have any questions regarding the bills this cycle that were reviewed? I didn't. Nope. Okay. Are there any items that directors would like to pull from tonight's consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion for tonight's consent agenda?
I move to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. That takes us to tonight's public hearings. We have 3, and the first one is the 2025 West High Roof Replacement Project. Vice President Abraham.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the 2025 West High School Roof Replacement Project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on January 14th, 2025. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press-Citizen on January 15th, 2025. The district will receive bids on this project at 1:30 p.m. January 30th, 2025 at the Facilities Management Conference Center, 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on January 15th, 2025. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public?
I will close that public hearing and move on to the next one, which is the 2025 Horn Elementary School Roof Replacement Project.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the 2025 Horn Elementary School Roof Replacement Project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on January 14th, 2025. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press-Citizen on January 15th, 2025. The district will receive bids on this project at 2 p.m. January 30th, 2025 at the Facilities Management Conference Center, 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on January 15th, 2025. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public?
I will close that public hearing, and we will move on to our last one, which is the 2025 Wood Elementary School roof replacement project.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the 2025 Wood Elementary School roof replacement project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on January 14th, 2025. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on January 15th, 2025. The district will receive bids on this project at 2:30 p.m. January 30th, 2025 at the Facilities Management Conference Center, 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on January 15th, 2025. Are there any questions from the board? Any questions from the public?
And that closes our last public hearing for tonight. Next up, we will have a committee report from the Education Committee.
We actually were unable to meet this month because school was canceled due to cold temperatures. So we will be meeting at Southeast to hear about the CASEL program for our February education meeting.
Great, thank you. Next up, it will be policy review. Who was elected chair of Policy and Governance? Okay, Director Williams, take it away.
Thanks, President Malone.
Don't be so happy about it.
I just wanted you to know I voted against myself, but it was a 2-1 vote. So we did the 400 series today. We actually had some pretty substantive discussions about various components of the 400 series that the admin team is going to look into. I think of note for the community and the board, although it wasn't really discussed very heavily, is there is a change to the employee cell phone policy. I know we've been talking about that a lot. And that was 401.12. And I think the general consensus is that the team did a nice job of coming up with language that really mirrors the student cell phone policy. Basically, employees are expected to not use their cell phones during instructional time unless, and I don't have it in front of me, a personal or health concern is present or it's approved as part of the course of instruction for the instructional time. But that's there. Everyone should take a look at that. We had some discussion about 401.17, the notice of arrest, criminal charges, or abuse complaints, and that's one that we're going to kind of work on some additional language with about what exactly we want to be notified of. And so the team's going to work on that. And then we also talked about the COVID policy, which is 407, thank you, Sean. 403.7. 403.7. I was going to say, I really thought it was a 403. Anyway, the 403.7 R1, and recommending that we strike it entirely from the policies as it doesn't really currently apply because we're not in a OSHA state of emergency. And if we needed it in the future, we can always bring it back. But since it's not really doing anything right now, we kind of, the committee thought it may be best to get rid of it. And so that's probably going to be a change maybe that we will see. We're just doing the first read through tonight. So I would anticipate seeing that struck through when these come back to the board. Did I miss anything?
Nope. With that, policy primers?
Policy primers were pretty straightforward. And really, the only major change was not even major change, but the non-routine typographical change was to the truancy, chronic absentee policy. But as the team mentioned, we're already kind of ahead of the curve on what IASB is recommending for chronic absenteeism, and so our policy already was in line with their new policy primer, so there's really not a lot of change there. And then the board of directors member development training, again, nothing too significant there. We're going to bring the way that we do the board's travel and reimbursement when we go to events is going to be brought into line with how employee travel and reimbursement is to be, which I think makes perfect sense. One system.
Great, thank you. Were there any comments from other policy and governance members? Great.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Director Williams, was there any discussion on the employee drug testing, why that is being struck out, or is it?
There was. Actually, we had quite a robust conversation about that as well, because that was my question. And what's being struck out is the notification. It's not the drug testing policy, it's the notification. And currently, we only have 2 employees that are subject to that, and they are being notified. No, I thought it was Board Secretary Colvin. I thought you said 2 employees total.
There were 2 that have the CDL license.
Yeah.
I heard it wrong.
So it's just a tiny group of people that it applies to, and so and what's being struck out is the notification portion. And my understanding is that notification will happen through a different channel.
Correct, and it just doesn't reflect the current process that we're using. And so that's one of the things that we'll go back and clean up before we even bring the policies back in February.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, that takes us to tonight's discussion item, which is our equity update focusing on BOLD and ICCSD. Superintendent Degner.
Yeah, I'll fill some space here while Executive Director Cottrell comes to the podium. She's going to highlight kind of our ongoing work with the BOLD Leadership Group. You remember this is a group we have to support our admin and leaders of color in the district, and so we've continued to iterate that work through this multi-year partnership with them. I think we've seen some great results and some good feedback from our group, but Laura's going to spend some time this evening walking you through that for our equity update.
Thank you all. Hello, everyone. How are you? Okay, just giving an overview of what we've been doing with the BOLD Leadership Network this year. It looks a little bit different. This year, they're working with a couple of our administrators they have one assistant principal and one who's like an administrator who has the potential, and she's done some leadership things. They're also working with our equity department on some coaching, and they're working with a group of our teachers who through a leadership fellowship. So I'm going to go through all of that. So the BOLD Leadership Network, just as a reminder, they are out of the Carolinas, and they come down. This year they're with us 4 times. They've already come down a couple times, and they have a couple more. One time they're coming in February, and then again in April to wrap us up. But it offers professional development, which is really, really cool for our department and also for our teachers, some mentorship opportunities with our administrators, and a strong sense of community. So for example, I don't know if you remember, but they worked with Principal Fitton, Principal Tanisha May, and some other people that they're not working with this year. However, those administrators still have access to this community platform that they have, and they're able to still get all types of ideas and help and come on and feel a sense of community that way. So just putting it out that they are still connected to our administrators from last year. Just in case you forgot their faces, and for those who've never seen them, we have Damon Qualls, who's the executive director of the BOLD Leadership Network, and then Dr. Edward Anderson, who works with the Leadership Fellowship, which is a newer thing that they're doing this year, and then Dr. Carlos Grant, who does the workshops and the consulting. So here and there's Taylor from our district. Again, they visit 4 campuses when 4 campus visits. They visit 2 campuses when they come out, and then they jump on virtually monthly. And again, that affinity group chat is open to our administrators who've ever worked with them in the past. And the Bold Leadership DEI Team Workshop series, when they come out to do mentorship, they also set aside an amount of time and work with our equity department. And so we've been able to kind of do some brainstorming, some problem solving, and just have some really good conversation in regards to what's happening in the Carolinas, what's happening with DEI in Cedar Rapids, and some other areas that they're actually working with to kind of do some comparative, like just trend setting and trying to figure out where we should go next in these areas. And it's been really fruitful. Like, we've had some really great conversations out of that. The Leadership Fellowship is where we bring in some of our teachers, and they've met once already. I want to say it was October, and it was really amazing. We looked at our academic data, we looked at our behavioral data, we looked at disparities. We talked about the history of education in Iowa, which was really, really eye-opening. We were able to have some guest speakers chime in to kind of give some insight, and it was really awesome to just kind of have that affinity space where we were able to look at what's happening in our district and start to brainstorm what should happen next. Like what can we do in our locus of control to push work forward? We actually have another session coming up at February 26th, where we'll bring that same group back and dig a little bit more, like pick up where we left off. Also, BOLD is coming down, like I said, in February to work with our principals in our equity department. And so they also, and I'll go to this slide because this is the one that our people engage with. They work with NAESP, which is National Association of Elementary Principals. Oh, it's this one. And Principals of Color Network. And so we've had some of our administrators go visit this in the past. And again, this is that affinity space that they're still able to connect to. And yes, there's Principal Fitton and Tanisha. And that is the presentation. Any questions?
Directors? I think we're gonna let you off the hook tonight.
That's
no.
Nope.
Director Eastham.
Of course, Charlie.
Thanks very much, Laura. Again, a brilliant presentation, as always. Can you let us know how you think this this initiative on our part is helping us to achieve our goals? Mm-hmm. I know you've touched on things here.
Yes.
I'm not asking for a confessional, but I just would like to have an honest conversation, as my friend Mr. Harper used to say.
Director Eastham, I get it. No problem. So this is a part of our retention plan. You all know that statistically, when students are able to see representatives of themselves within the staff, it's fruitful in a number of ways. And so this is one of the things that we did as a district to say, okay, we want to make sure that we are able to have staff of color that feel connected, administrators of color that feel connected, and make sure that they stay and are able to do well in their positions. And so this is out of that retention plan that we had.
Great. Thanks very much, Laura.
No problem.
Just a follow-up question to that. Then, Laura, thanks for your presentation. Do we have any follow-up data, like as far as job satisfaction from before when they started coming? I think it's been 3 years now, as opposed to present day. What does that look like?
So we can have them collect that. They did share out at the end of the school year with Matt and I some data that they collected from the group that they had been with for 2 years and some for 1 year. That was at the end of, that was like over the summer. And so we were able to see that it was beneficial for them. I know that we'll be able to collect the same data this time, even though the population shifted a little bit. We can still reach back to the ones who ever touch them to see whether or not what they received was beneficial. And I would say it is. Anytime that they come in town, those guys still go visit, and I always get feedback that they're still being beneficial. They can reach out to them whenever. They're helpful in different ways. So we can definitely get some data, though, to back that up.
And then can you share with us which attendance centers they were at this fall?
This fall, they're with two of our leaders, one at City High and one at West High.
Great. Thank you so much, Director Cottrell. We appreciate you being here tonight and presenting.
Thank you. No problem. I'm going to try to get back to the right screen. Thank you.
And that takes us to our legislative update. We did have our first forum this past Friday, as well as the League of Women Voters of Johnson County Education Forum. That was the next day, Saturday. President Shutt and myself was able to attend. It was warm, but it was also very engaging and interesting. Superintendent Degner?
Yeah, thanks, President Malone. So we're monitoring several things, as you can imagine, at the state and federal level. Today, you already know the governor had proposed a 2% SSA. The Senate also released a proposal for a 2% SSA package, which for the public listening, that's supplemental state aid, which affects our per pupil allocation, which is how our general fund is funded through the state government. We get a dollar amount for each of the students on our certified enrollment, and so they're proposing a 2% growth to that number. We're also watching bills around cell phones, preschool. You saw in the governor's address that she had mentioned some public-private partnerships with some grant opportunities for preschool. There's a bill on a civics test that would need to be passed by students before graduation, some information on school start date, and then one of the more controversial policies that we think could be coming our way based on what's happened in higher ed would be some of the DEI conversation and how that would affect some of the work Laura just presented or our equity team in general. And so we'll want to make sure we stay close to any activity there and be planful and thoughtful with our approach and what we believe is important here for the district. On the federal level, you've seen much of the recent news around immigration and deportations, and so you've seen some communications from me go out to the public, reminders about emergency contacts, and then some of the things about our stance or our approach were we to see ICE on one of our school campuses. We're also preparing for the event that if that raid were to happen elsewhere and we had students that were with us and their parents were no longer here, how we would try to problem solve that situation with our community partners. So we've been putting a lot of time and attention and effort into that and making sure that we've thought through some different scenarios, communicated to our administrators as well as our families at large. And then the news of the day was the pause to the federal grants out of Washington. And I think most people are familiar with the news right before we came in here that looked like that's been blocked by a federal judge at least until Monday. That was the most up-to-date information we had. We worked with legal counsel on what some of those potential impact points for us could be today. And I think the best thing I can say about it tonight is that we need to continue to talk to them and wait for further guidance to come, as I think a lot of people are trying to piece together what that might mean or what it might not mean for potential impact points for K-12 education and what will be affected. So it's a busy time of year. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot to keep up with, but those were kind of the large items as I thought through today. As you can imagine, the other thing is it substantially shifts our work, right? When some of these things happen each day, it causes us to do some quick pivots and some quick turn. And so I thank the team for their efforts on that, knowing that, our plan for today might have been one thing and we were totally disrupted to go in a different direction and make sure we serve the immediate needs. So happy to answer any questions the board might have on that or try to expound on anything that I mentioned.
Matt, could you tell us and the public if there's any threat to our ability to serve free lunches or free breakfast to the student populations?
I think that is one that we're still trying to become aware of. We don't know is the easy answer to that. And so the vagueness of the memo that the White House put out, we're trying to better understand. And Legal counsel had really told us there should be some direction coming from federal agencies about what is specifically impacted versus what is not. And so that timeline for them to do so, we were talking a little bit before the meeting, we think it could be anywhere between 5 days to 2 weeks before we would know from those agencies, from their viewpoint, what is affected by that memo and what is not.
How much federal funding do we, or Director Eastham, are you done?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. How much federal funding do we receive?
Yeah, so it's on the general fund side, it's 3.5% of our budget on the general fund side, and that really is primarily made up of our title programs and then Medicaid reimbursements.
That's $200 million budget, so what, $7 million?
Yeah, we're about right at $7 million.
And to piggyback on Charlie's, so that covers Medicaid, you said, Title I.
All title programs. Title I's our largest title program, but you have things like Title III, Title II, Title IV.
So classroom teachers, right?
Yes, classroom teachers are funded through that.
Okay. Then to piggyback on Charlie's question, how much money do we typically receive for nutrition services from the federal government?
So Adam, when we looked at that today, nutrition service or nutrition funds about a $9 million budget. We figured 2/3 of that is
just a little bit below 2/3 is federal sources.
So 6 million.
And the rest then is of course parent pay.
How often, let's say this pause goes on for a while, how often do we get reimbursed? Is that monthly, quarterly, weekly?
Yeah, so most of those are on a quarter reimbursement. And so part of what we tried to work through today is knowing that the state is the holder of most of these funds right now. And so those federal disbursements have already happened to the states. And so if those were to be paused, it would require states to fall in line with then redistributing that money out to school districts. So they would sit on that money or return that to the federal government based on whatever guidance they get. But those are quarterly disbursements. And then of course, I think kind of where Director Lingo's going, we get into the timeline about how much money would we have to provide those before the next disbursement. And so that's why it'll be, critical for us to understand which programs are affected and how immediate, any impact points would be felt.
And then just jump back to another question. The 2% SSA, how does, that's more for CFO Kurth, how does that line up with the projections you gave us?
It's exactly what I had budgeted for in the projections that I gave you.
Great job, I guess. I wish you were wrong and it was more, but thank you.
Thanks, Director Lingo. Any other questions?
Thank you for your answers.
Yeah.
The only other thing of note is our upcoming legislative forums. Our next one will be at the end of February, February 28th. It will begin at 4 o'clock in this room, and the public is invited to watch that unfold as well. All right. That takes us to our last agenda item, which is agenda setting for our February 11th meeting. And we have our normal placeholders of student rep, ICCEA updates, a public hearing, operations committee report, policy review. We'll tackle 400s again, and looks like we have a couple of presentations. Superintendent Degner.
Yeah, sorry, my computer went to sleep here, so I'm not exactly sure what's on that draft, but I know what we have.
The quarterly financial report and the annual enrollment class size demographics report.
Good. So there'd be 2 enrollment-focused reports there. One, President Malone just mentioned, that's our delivery of the class size demographics enrollment report, but then we're also targeted to have that demographer report to you at that first February meeting as well. And so we have those 2 items. The operations committee, I haven't yet talked to Director Lingo about this, but we had a topic of potential cybersecurity that we would consider for that one. So those were the 3 I had for the 11th to think
I'm sorry.
about.
So there will be an operations meeting on the 11th? Sounds like it, maybe?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, because it was only the regular meeting agenda.
Oh, sorry, that's all
okay.
that was on there. Yep.
All right.
I was wondering if at some point, maybe later on in February or March, discussion over the truancy program and the law, because I've had multiple people come out and ask me about it and what is going on with the policy. So if anybody else has any questions on it too.
I think it would be a good time to update you guys on that. Remember, we did a pretty comprehensive set of policies when that started. Even some of those showed up again for you tonight. In the past, we've also had the county attorney here to say how they handle their end of the truancy, but we've done a lot of work on chronic absenteeism this year and actually have some good data we'd like to also show you in that regard. So we can certainly line up a presentation in the future for that.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Anything else from directors? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.